policy order. The song that I have, if we want to have music, is related to that. What I might do is turn a little bit so I could sort of face your vocal mic.
Yeah, sorry,
We'll
the mics
rotate.
are-
No, it's not actually. We'll work easily. That'll be great. Just right about 12. And then we extend that a tiny bit. If it flattens a little. I don't know if it flattens. That's getting very close now. That's good. And then if you roll this back away, I'm going to turn towards this. The mother of exile looks out on the sea, waiting for her child in the land of the free. And somewhere in her eyes, the tears become the tide. She came 5,000 miles, the mother of exile. These tyrants, chains, and thieves, she has always known. Some have she came 5,000 miles, the mother of exiles. No goodbye, no last embrace, the crime that takes and takes. She clutches tight a page, another endless night she prays. Tonight she lifts a flame, and history's taking names. She came in her sandals and a gown, and you can see for miles from the window in her crown, the mother of exiles. Praise her child will be found. She came 5,000 miles.
Nice. That was Jim Allen here live in the studio for Northern Remedy, the show dedicated to New Haven's music, past, present, and future. I'm your host, Brian Slattery. I'm the arts editor of the New Haven Independent, and we're here to talk about the upcoming CT Folk Festival in Edgerton Park, coming next weekend, not Labor Day weekend, but the weekend after that. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about that song?
So I was struck when I reread the poem that is inside the Statue of Liberty, that, and we all know that poem, the famous line, give me your
You can
tired
get closer to the microphone.
Give me your tired,
There you are.
Your hungry, huddled masses yearning to be free. But when I was rereading the poem, I was like, oh wow, mother of exiles. That's how the poet, I forget, was it Emma?
Emma Lazarus.
Right, Emma Lazarus named her the mother of exiles. And I thought, this is like, the irony of this is just killing me, because what we see that's been going on with the murdering the soul of immigrant children at the border, the most appalling crime, I think. I mean, there's really no words to describe it. And when I saw that this symbol of our iconic symbol of our openness had actually been named by a poet, a mother, that she's a parent. And I thought, wow, that's so weird. And so I wanted to write a song that spoke to that. And yet, the song, every line had to be true of both an actual mother and the statue. And it became this matter of how to make it clear at some point in the song that I was talking about the statue. And so it was it took a long time to write, but I'm looking forward to playing it at the Folk Festival next September 7th, next Saturday, not this Saturday. And it's really a privilege to play it on this station in particular. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
It's
more
an
than
issue
welcome.
Thank you for coming. We got to keep on top of.
So this is it's cool that you picked a song with a social justice component to it, because I think that's as I was looking at the lineup for the festival itself, it struck me that has also become sort of part of the conversation with the festival. Charles Rothenberger, hello. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us what your position at CT Folk is these days.
So I'm on the board of CT Folk and work with a great bunch of talented people to not only bring you the Connecticut Folk Festival, which happens the first Saturday after Labor Day each year, but also we run a Folk Friday series throughout the year as well.
Right.
So every Friday evening, you have an opportunity.
Can you bring the microphone closer to you?
So every Friday evening,
Yes,
you have an opportunity to see talented musicians right here in New Haven.
Yeah, totally. So last year, you may recall that we were talking about this sort of ongoing shift in the, not just in the folk music scene, but in society at large, about sort of addressing history and addressing the more sordid, you know, I'm trying to think of how to sum it up really quickly. The ugliest aspects of American history, and the ways that we have to sort of confront our history of racism and the history of, inequality and that kind of thing. And I see that is reflected now in some of the people that you have coming, which is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you're well aware, I mean, folk music has always been married to social justice movements and issues of equality and equity. And certainly in the times that we're living in right now, I would be amazed if musicians weren't responding very powerfully to what we see remarkably, in the news every day.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine after coming off what was seen as a milestone, electing our first Black president, probably one of the most capable and enlightened and capable presidents that we've had, at least in recent history.
Yeah.
To go to this is really remarkable. And you listen to the news, you read the tweets, and it really feels almost like we're Italy or some country. The Silvio Berlusconi of America. Hard to believe that the United States could be put in this position, but it's encouraging to see people responding with a message not only of justice and opposition, but also hope.
Yeah. I think that's also, I mean, as a musician, part of what I like about the message of confronting history and being more inclusive is that I like to hear more diverse sounds. It's as simple as that in some ways. Like, while I'm politically aligned with it, I'm also kind of musically aligned with it. I like a greater range of sound. The way that people say voices must be included is usually a metaphor, but in this case, it isn't. It's also about hearing it's literally about hearing different people's voices. Tell us a little bit about some of the people who are coming. Like, there's the ones that really hit me would be like there's this whole I had this problem of like thinking about everything at once all of a sudden. But there's a whole series of I think in the last few years, there's I think sort of spearheaded by Rhiannon Giddens, there's been a real influx of non-white musicians into what has been for a few decades now a pretty white thing. And that's not sort of anybody's fault in particular, but it's something that, when we talk about needing to address it, it's about having to make space for that.
Well, we're really excited to have Amethyst Kia and her trio joining us. She's just coming off of a great new record that she put together actually with one of the members of another act that we have, the Birds of Chicago.
Right.
And that's something that's on the Smithsonian Folkways album,
Totally.
Label, great label with a lot of history in terms of this. And it's really a record that addresses head-on sort of what we're dealing with in America today.
She's part of the this is the Our Native Daughters project, right?
Yeah.
Which is the one where I think it's helped a lot by having Rhiannon Giddens at the top of it, but it's really important that it's not just her. She's representative of a much larger movement going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you? I remember you saying last year that this was like this was going to be sort of a focus of the board in deciding and of the people at CT Folk in deciding who to book for next year. Can you tell us a little bit about that conversation?
Sure. We've been having conversations for a while now about the need for greater diversity, both among the performers, but also, hosting this in New Haven, trying to reach out to the communities and have a greater diversity in our audience as well. I think folk music kind of gets a tag of, it's old white people, and there's certainly a lot of that, and we love that. But we also have a lot of younger people from Yale. But what we've struggled with is, more people of color from the community attending the festival, and hopefully by having more representative individuals performing, that will be attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, right. How was it in reaching out to the musicians to book them?
So we have kind of a dual process, and Nicole Harriet, who's our executive director, runs the festival and does most of the booking for the headliners. The board is more involved, other than just discussing potential performers and approving Nicole's activities, reaching out, more involved in our audition process.
Yeah.
So every year we do host an audition process where we invite musicians throughout the region. Typically it's New England and the Mid-Atlantic coast to submit videos to us. The
Nice.
board reviews them, and we invite a handful of those to come perform for a special Folk Friday audition night, where it's sort of round robin. Everybody does a couple of songs, tend to generally come together at the end for some sort of a group event as well.
Yeah.
And then we pick 2 or 3 of them to perform. And this year we're excited to have Kristen Sweeney and Quarter Horse,
Cool.
a great young band from Long Island, joining our lineup as a result of that audition
Nice.
process.
Nice. I imagine you're at the point where you have more. There's the problem is of having a lot of difficult choices to make.
Yeah, we usually get upwards of 75 or so videos to go through. And,
Yeah.
of course, due diligence, you tend to sort of use that as a springboard, then maybe explore some other stuff if you're sort of on the
Sure.
fence. But it really is. Narrowing it down to 10 folks out of that is tough. But you get exposed to a lot of great music.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Jim, please feel free to jump in as thoughts occur to you.
Oh.
I don't want to make this into and now you will speak. And now you will speak. But yeah, tell us about what are you preparing to do for next weekend?
Well, our quartet, Jim Allen Band with Richard Neal, of some listeners may recognize from Bluegrass and Beer at long-running acoustic cafe series. Richard hosted that a long time, and our friend Cadence Carroll, and also Rick Brodsky on bass. The 4 of us will play at 2:35, and we'll be doing maybe a couple covers, but a set of most of my original material from my mostly my upcoming
Cool.
album.
Get closer to the microphone.
Sure.
Sorry. There you go.
And so, it will be, as I was putting the set list together and I had written a couple of protest-oriented songs, I thought this is definitely the gig to pull these out. And I do have another that's, these days I have to laugh or else I'll cry. So I do have one if you'd like.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Because I wrote this because my wife had this sticker on her car that said FDT, and I said, what does that mean?
Something you can't say on the radio.
Right, so, and I won't. But so this is kind of a novelty song, but FDT, FDT, BTWOMG, FDT, TGIF. Oh no, we got a year and a half left, and he never calls a Nazi an SOB, so FDT. Who's gonna pay for that wall? Greenland, Canada, no, wait. Whose house of cards is 20 feet tall? FDT, FDT. That's what we're singing in the land of the free. It's FDT. Cause he never calls a Nazi an SOB. FDT. BTWOMG FUDT. That's the short form. We'll probably stretch out.
Yeah, you get to take solos.
I've got rhythm, but
right.
But we have a lot of other different music too, some bluegrass and a lot of other different songs, and these incredible musicians again, Rick Brodsky and Katie Carroll and Richard Neal will be there. So that's going to be a joy.
So speaking of this kind of thing, though, so I was telling Charles before you arrived, but let's get into this. So in another life, I play a lot of Appalachian music. So I go down south for a couple of weeks every summer to do go to festivals. And this year I went to go teach at a place called Augusta Heritage Center, where I taught banjo and sort of got it immersed in what everybody else was doing, which is super fun. But like this political conversation that we're having in the music is actually fairly fraught. It's not. I think in the Northeast it tends to skew like much more liberal. So we're kind of under the impression that like everybody agrees with us, but
Right, and
but that's actually not true.
that's right. And
Wait,
the reasons
what?
for not agreeing, are sometimes based on concerns that are legitimate within the context of their experience as working people, as families.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that's something that's kind of interesting to wrestle with, right? I'm going to ask you to like respond to this thing because I'll be the guy in the middle, which is that in teaching at a place in West Virginia, there's the sense of it's not just wading into like the pretty fraught space of that. There's a really hard history of slavery, and there's also a really hard history of sharecropping, and of being a super poor coal miner, and of having a lot of things stacked against you. And that's and then there's the issue of me being just this like middle class kid from upstate New York who kind of like who wanders into this thing and says, hey, I'm going to teach you the banjo, and meanwhile we're going to like talk about all this stuff at once. And like there's some very legitimate questions as to like what are you doing teaching this class, other than the fact that it is, the short answer is, well, the coordinator hired me. But like there's a much more, for me there is a lot of sort of soul searching about why exactly am I teaching this? What is what not exactly what right do I have to do it, but what is my role to play as somebody who like shares neither of those backgrounds, and yet has immersed himself in this music that he loves. But you have to contend with all of this because for many people, the music has a lot of familial and cultural attachment. A lot of people have learned from their parents, from their grandparents, from friends and neighbors, and those are all these like, to me, very like rich and deep connections that I would never invalidate. In a million years I would never invalidate that, or the history behind all of that. But at the same time I have these political beliefs of my own that put me often on one side of that conversation, and that all gets very complicated.
you're like bringing back the music. You're sort of like a mirror of that so much of that music that influenced you, and there you are going to the source,
Yeah.
sort of reflecting back to it the richness that they can then. So I'm sure a lot of those people think that's really cool because they're like, wow, my culture is also touching this other region,
Which
people
is
that are very different in some
undoubtedly
ways.
true.
Yeah.
Which is undoubtedly true.
Was it? Are you anywhere near Lindytown down there?
I went to Elkins, West Virginia, which is fairly isolated even by West Virginian standards.
I have a song about a place in West Virginia. If we after break, if you want to.
Cool. Now that I've thrown this giant mud ball of problems out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess just sort of framing the experience generally. I think the secret to that, as it is to anything, is just sort of approaching people and situations with mutual respect, right?
Yeah.
So going in and just sort of, recognizing your self-awareness about the situation, and just say, hey, I have some things that maybe I can teach you, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that you can teach me as well. So let's learn together.
Yeah. Do you see the more conservative side of the music represented in the audience?
I have not really seen that, but we're in New Haven.
I know,
so
exactly. We are in the Northeast after all. I'm just curious.
Ground zero for liberalism, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. yeah. So in some ways, it does make it easier.
And the political landscape keeps shifting too. Of course, I mean, you've got plenty on the other side of the aisle from me or us who are, and some of our NRA members who are ready for, serious background checks, and yet that issue keeps flying around, and no one, that's another big issue that kind of
Yeah.
cuts across that in interesting ways.
Yes, I mean there is that. I mean, I I did have this while I was there. I had this kind of great conversation with some people who work in a shop about how awesome open carry laws were. That was my job. That was my time to smile and nod. Because it's like, I'm not here to change your mind.
and
it's fine.
And part of the secret,
know.
right? I think this latest round, I think the debate has been urgent as it needs to be,
Yeah.
but respectful. And I think part of the problem in the past has been attacking people who, for whatever reason, like guns.
Yeah.
Whether
Right.
it's their hobby or they're hunters, not necessarily
Sure.
the criminal element, but and sometimes it's hard in the heat of the moment and you're passionate about a subject, but keeping the focus clearly on the problem that you're trying to solve and the solution without sort of demonizing people who may hold a different opinion. And
Sure.
I think our relative lack of success to date is probably at least partially because there seems to be a difficulty in engaging with and understanding their side of the argument. In that response,
Yeah.
there's a tendency to
For sure.
dismiss.
And it's amazing how music can bridge those fraught feelings of, assumed alienation.
Get closer.
I've sometimes had,
There you go.
conversations at length with people who are, would definitely be very conservative compared to me. And then, we'll talk passionately and earnestly, and then, we'll play Grateful Dead song, and we both agree that's the tops, So, but if those songs can also have content that's makes sense, and that's even better because folk music can provide that educational
For sure.
angle, both in, socially and in the culture of the music.
I think that like some of the most valuable conversations gun control in particular actually have been with like fellow musicians who are gun owners and proud NRA members, but share the place where we meet is that we share the sense that like maybe things have gone a little too far, and we may disagree on exactly where that is, but we don't disagree on the general idea, of like they are as horrified as I am.
Well, here's one.
At what's going on.
Speaking of West Virginia, where I think that was where they identified the town where something like 10 million OxyContin pills were delivered over a period of 4 years.
Right.
And of course, they could see that was happening. And there's a bunch of coal mining families and people down there that are hurting. And what is that about? And just the whole energy issue and the idea of people who have worked in coal a long time. There's a lot to that.
Yes. Well, the other fun thing is to like that there are way more wind farms in West Virginia than there are here in Connecticut.
I have a piece about I've driven through Virginia. Of course, I'm actually going to Virginia in a couple of weeks for about a month for a wedding, but I've never spent any significant time in the South.
Yeah.
But I was reading an article by Dan Barry of the New York Times, and he was telling the story about this town called Lindytown, where the mountaintop removal really had this devastating impact. And I had written a song about it, and now if you go online and look up Lindytown, there are many songs that tell that story. So that's one we'll do at the festival, and maybe you want to talk about some of the other music that you'll...
Yeah.
Well, I think, since we've been talking about Lindytown, and you're probably too modest to mention it yourself, but it's been getting some attention, right? Through the John Lennon songwriting.
I honestly had forgotten that. I shouldn't thank you because I should not forget that.
Tell me about what this is.
It did not, let's put it
Nice
the big news is it did not win first prize, but it did win recognition as one of the finalists. And that's actually, I wasn't meaning to bring that up. I actually forgot to bring my record. I've been so focused on writing the next batch of songs. I was parking. I was thinking, I'm such an idiot. I should have brought my CD and at least left it with Brian. But that track, I had the great pleasure of bringing in Sofia Chiarandini, who's a brilliant violinist currently at Berkeley, and who I had the privilege of teaching her to improvise. She already had so much under her belt when I first met her, and she was in early high school, and she came and played on the record, and it was just take after take of this stunning violin work on this piece, Lindy Town, and it did. I submitted it, and it won. It was one of the finalists in the last session.
Awesome.
And I'm hopeful that this other song I had written, which is about the gun issue, called "Hear the People," which is also on the record that came out last year, might win some recognition there, because that's such an important topic. Thank you.
Of course.
Let's hear that song.
Okay, great.
We can't talk about the song and then not hear the song.
We're
shamelessly plugging my
teeing
song.
it up
Like,
for you.
No.
I did not plan to play it, and I don't have the lyrics, so let's hope I remember them. I should mention the article by Dan Barry, who also is not from that part of the country, as far as I know, but was there and told the story so stunningly well in the New York Times many years ago. The mountaintops are removed bit by bit, and what happens is it becomes really impossible to stay and live in those conditions.
Right.
So the company says, well, hey, we'll buy you, and one by one, everyone has to sort of pack up and call it a day, because you just can't live with the dust and everything.
Right.
Your granddaddy's tombstone is up there on the ridge, and you can't even go there anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have your helmet. You don't have so it's really, and then you see the devastation from the air, and it's quite astounding. And he talked to some really important people in that article who are activists, and also to a man who stayed, the last two people there. The mother was Ginny, and she was suffering with some of the things that come with being very old, and her son, the dad was a minor. He's gone, and he said, I want to keep her here because it keeps her memories active.
Yeah.
And so they are in the song. That's Mama in the story, Ginny. Close to twilight, down this old Appalachian road, night falls black as the coal over Lindy Town. 1895, my great-grandfather waded through those streams, crystal clear, flowing through the green hills and down over Lindy Town. Now there's no one at all at the old Union Hall from the mines, and scattered on the floor from a lifetime before, all the papers for wages and lost time. But I remember that old steam in the kids and everyone, and a church bell ringing out when day was done over Lindy Town. Before Massey started blasting the old mountaintops away, the dust falling day after day after day covered Lindy Town. Now there's no one at all, 'cause when mountains fall, it's hard to stay. Mr. Cook, I've been told, says we got to have a coal, but I believe with all my heart there's a better way. Now, Mama, she's got memories in rooms she can't unlock. Now and then one opens for a moment as she walks here in Lindy Town. Close to twilight, down this old Appalachian road, night falls black as the coal. But there's one light still burning in the place she calls home, over Lindy Town.
Nice.
Beautiful.
That's a great song. I can see.
Thank you.
I can see why it. I can see why it went where it did.
But I can't see why it didn't take the blue ribbon.
Oh, thank you very much.
Do you know what won?
It takes you know, it's funny, the dust. I don't. I forget who won. But I love the song, and I appreciate being able to play it. And I wish I could have sung a little better. It's just not warmed up. But I remember as I sang it, I was forgetting a couple words, but it takes a lot of breath to sing that song.
It sounded great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the winner was an excellent song in the John Lennon Song Contest. I remember hearing it, but I don't remember the artist's name.
Nice. So it's also important to mention that the Connecticut Folk Festival will be fun.
Yeah. That's kind of a dirge, that last one.
No, I mean, you know, we spent a while talking about political issues and social justice, and that's good, but
Very kid-friendly event. As a matter of fact, we have a whole separate Green Kids Village that's set up beginning at 11:45.
Oh, cool.
So, you know, this is an event for the entire family. There are going to be specific activities scheduled throughout the day for kids of all ages, in addition to the music.
Yeah, cool. The other part of it that I was noticing with the lineup is that it skews a little more toward like bands that are like danceable. I guess that's one way to put it. Like especially with Donna the Buffalo headlining,
Right.
which I think of as basically a dance band.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection, but that's interesting. Hopefully people will be moving. You know, people tend to get more active as the afternoon and evening wears on.
Yeah.
You know, plenty of space for blankets and to hang out and chill. But yeah, we would certainly encourage folks to mosey up to the front of the stage and dance if they are so inclined.
Edgerton State Park? Or City Park?
Yep, Edgerton Park. Right here in New Haven.
Is there was there a story behind getting Down to the Buffalo to come to the festival? Because like they have played in town before. They played like Toads, or they I can't remember where else they've played. Toads is the last one I remember.
Yeah, so next year we're gonna get Nicole in here to answer all of these deep, mysterious
it's totally
questions
fine.
about our booking process.
Right.
You know, we're super excited to have them. You know, in addition to Birds of Chicago, Ghosts of Paul Revere.
Right.
You know, ton of great acts. And one of the bands which actually came up through our audition process, which will be opening for Jim at 1:45 in the afternoon. So folks should get there during daylight hours. Don't come just for the headliners. Is a band called Quarter Horse, 6-piece band out of Long Island, that bastion of traditional folk music. But they're fantastic, excellent musicians, and really when they perform for us on Folk Friday, we're just blown away by their vocal harmonies. 3 of them sing just Crosby, Stills, and Nash level.
Nice. And then what is the music like that they're playing in addition to singing? Is it how might you describe their music?
Squarely Americana.
Yeah. Cool.
So, you know, sort of contemporary Americana, but, you know, with flecks of some harkening back to Appalachia
Yeah, yeah.
and other places.
You also meant, we were talking at the beginning that, like, I mean, not to suddenly go back all the way back to the social justice stuff, but you had a nice point where you sort of said that in some ways the folk scene is coming full circle from where it was maybe like in the 60s, in the combination of people, combination of lyrical content, but then also like the musical
Yeah, I mean,
aspects of it.
I'm not a firsthand witness to the social justice movement of the 1960s, but I've certainly spent my time reading about it and
Yeah.
studying it. And it seemed like a time where there weren't, I guess we just weren't as siloed as we are now, and there was more sort of people reaching across their particular cultural or ethnic or racial divides to support each other in quote unquote the cause. And maybe we've actually moved backwards in some respects in the intervening years, but as you pointed out, heartened to note that you see that sort of coming around again.
Yes. No, I mean, I really, I really do. I actually, like, Down in the Buffalo is a good example of that. I mean, again, not to turn a 25-year story into a radio thing. They're from my hometown, so I remember seeing them in high school and sort of watching them, become a national touring act. Like, part of me is like a little bit. It's not that I'm surprised. It's more like it doesn't occur to you that like a national touring act can come from your hometown. They usually come from other places.
Right.
So, yeah, it's one of those, like, and I think it took me a long time to realize that they were kind of a big deal. Like, they weren't just like a really good local band. I was like, oh,
hey,
wow.
every really good local band is a big national touring band in your mind. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there was a part of me
in
that
its
was
own
like,
mind.
Well,
The band.
yeah. I mean, I just remember being in my mid-20s and people talking about that band and being like, how do you even know about them? It didn't occur to me that like they were spending most of the year like not in town touring. But they're an example of a band that like really this is worth saying on the radio, that they're all really good Appalachian musicians. Like, they could field a really good string band. Like, the two main people are awesome fiddle players. Not that you would ever know this from Down in the Buffalo, but like that's where they started, is like playing sort of like music for square dances and things like that. And like there's those roots go pretty deep at this point. And they turned all of that into this kind of interesting musical mix of, Appalachian stuff, and also there's a lot of like Cajun and Zydeco in their music, which they can also play idiomatically when they want to. Like they apparently they had a rule at one point that everybody had to be a really good fiddle player to be in the band at all. Which is
Wow.
Even the drummer, step up.
Even the drum, no, exactly. Even the drummer, like they all needed to be able to like play the fiddle if they're going to be in the band. There's a brief period in their history where that was.
That's a high bar, man.
Yeah, but they could do it, But
That's awesome.
Yeah. So like they're sort of they're a band that's been like working that angle for a while of figuring out how to connect various parts of American music together and figuring out how to make that sound cohesive. So
I guess I should ask if I'm sure everyone listening right now is very familiar with Down in the Buffalo, but if they're not and they want to check them out, do you have a favorite song that you would recommend?
Oh my God!
Folks, Google?
All of my references to that band are like from their first album from when I was in high school. So I feel really bad sort of being like, you should go check out their first album. They have like a dozen albums.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's more
frequently the first album is not a bad place to start.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's more like, I think when my favorite memories of that band are not. I like their albums fine. I think that they're a really good live band. That's the if someone has become intrigued by what I've said, I'd say you should go see them, because I think that they're a really on an album, like many bands like them, you have to shorten the songs, you have to make it kind of like little package that the song makes sense. But like as a live band, they tend to like stretch out a little bit more, and the more the best aspects of their music come out when they're having a lot of fun with the songs that they wrote.
So
So
go
as
see
a live
them, you
band, they're
say.
great. Yes.
Perhaps on September 7th.
Yeah, perhaps on September 7th at the CT Folk Festival in Edgerton Park.
Festival is free.
It is free.
That's awesome.
There will be stations set up to accept donations. There's a suggested donation of $10 to help support the work and the programming that we do, not just for the festival, but throughout the year. But it is free to all comers.
Yeah, and some will give more of it.
Some do, yes.
Let me fulfill my FCC requirement and tell you that you're listening to Northern Remedy here on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting from New Haven, Connecticut. This is the show dedicated to New Haven's music, past, present, and future. And I'm here with Jim Allen and Charles Rothenberger talking about the CT Folk Festival coming up on September 7th. That would be a Saturday at Edgerton Park in the East Rock neighborhood of New Haven.
And all day.
And it's all day.
First
exactly.
act, which is a songwriting competition.
Nice.
5 individuals performing 2 songs each in a judged contest. And again, one of those individuals was identified through our audition process. But
Cool.
That kicks off at 11
Nice.
a.m. So,
And then it goes until
it goes until 10 p.m.
sweet.
And people can bring food or buy food there, or
Yep. So we'll have plenty of food trucks there.
Awesome. The trend I
food
hope
trucks,
never goes away.
Bring a reusable water bottle because we'll also have free water stations available throughout. And
Cool.
we will also have a beer and wine tent for those that are so inclined.
Nice.
It's a relative novelty to the CT folk. We've done it the past 2 years, and it seems to have worked out well.
I imagine that's
Nice.
working very well. Like,
Yes, very well. But I should say that because we do have that, that folks are not permitted to bring in their own alcoholic beverages.
right.
good idea.
Can you talk about what it takes to keep the festival free?
Well, I would sort of pat myself on the back and just say some great dedicated volunteers. But that has nothing to do with me.
That's
even
part of it.
beyond the board. The board is fantastic. But the festival itself, we just have dozens of volunteers, some of whom have been doing this for 5, 6, 10 years for us to help set up booths, help with the staging, help with the logistics, the backstage hospitality areas, and then be available for those inevitable emergencies, helping with first aid. So it really is a community of volunteers
Cool.
that help to put this together.
And then where does the money come from?
So primarily, a lot of it is through the donations that we receive for the Folk Fest.
Nice.
The Folk Fridays is a paid event, so it's a ticketed event. And we also are busy writing grants and searching for grants dollars through arts funding.
Cool. Now, how is the funding aspect going? This goes into this longer conversation that I feel like I'm always flogging in articles about, how funding is contracting in a lot of places, and often, arts funding is on the chopping block first, and so for a lot of arts organizations, like it's harder than it used to be.
Yeah, I will say that the grant funding that we receive is by no means the lion's share of what supports us throughout the year. We do have private donors, some of whom have been supporting the festival for years.
Cool.
Who've been very generous. And again, as Jim said, the suggested donations that we collect at the gate, folks tend to be as generous as they can be there as well. And thanks to just the great positive reception that the Folk Festival has gotten over the last several years, we're actually in a place where that's approaching a self-sustaining event.
That's fabulous. So it turns out that that donation box really does matter.
Yeah. And it's so we before my time, the festival took different approaches. At one point, it was a ticketed, paid event. Then it was entirely free, and we found this to be a nice balance between those two.
Because there are people who just want to give you money.
There are.
Yeah.
We're happy to gratefully receive it.
Exactly. Someone wants to give you money.
Yeah. Well, it's a great event. I mean, it really is. It's a full day of music. 12 hours. We have the Green Expo event where we'll have 75 vendors. So in between sets, or even during the music, because you can hear it anywhere, you can wander through the green vending events and look at their wares. And then again, specific activities aimed at kids, so they're not getting restless just sitting on your blanket in the sun, wondering, when they can go home. I'm assuming they're going to enjoy the music, but kids can be.
Right. So. But it's also worth mentioning that for the 4 or 5 people that may not have been to Edgerton Park, that it's a really awesome park. It's a nice, if you're there with your kid, it's actually a pretty fabulous place for them to be for a day.
It's beautiful, and I will say one of the advantages of getting there during the afternoon as opposed to waiting until the evening is that there is a lot of on-street parking around the park. So parking is generally not an issue. But you get there early, you get a spot right next to the gate.
Yeah, right on. So, Jim, I see that you've switched instruments.
Yes, I brought this along because it fits a little better into this arrangement.
I know, into the Tetris puzzle that is our studio.
It's perfect for. You mentioned there's going to be some Appalachian flavored music, perhaps even from Donna and the Buffalo, although they're more of a dance band. As you were saying.
Yeah.
But certainly that influence is there in our band's music as well. And
for sure.
I have a couple of things.
Everywhere.
This is like a short little medley if you want to go out with it. But there may be more about the festival to talk about before then.
Is there anything you feel like I've forgotten? Because
I feel like we should just say the date once again, because you can never do that. So September 7th.
Yes.
Music starts promptly at 11 a.m. with our songwriting competition, and we'll be going straight through music all day until 10 p.m.
Cool.
And Edgerton Park, 75 Cliff Street, New Haven, if you need to Google directions.
Yeah, it's like right off. I mean, it's right off Whitney Avenue.
Yep.
It's on Whitney Avenue actually, and it's right at the border of New Haven and Hamden. If you see the sign that says "Welcome to Hamden," you've gone too far, but only by about 30 yards.
Right, just before the Eli Whitney Museum.
And it is rain or shine.
It is rain or shine.
Yes. Cool.
We're gonna have great weather.
We'll have you be our shaman for the event.
That's right. That's right.
I've never been. I'm one of those 4 or 5 people. I've never been to Edgerton Park.
There we go.
I spent a lot of years in New Haven going to Southern Connecticut State University, and we're looking forward to playing a song called Jazzbo because on Whaley Avenue there was this guy who used to have lunch at this place, this old man, and one day he was walking out and I heard the chef say, "Yeah, that's Jazzbo. He was a boxer back in the 20s. And I thought, wow. And I actually wrote a song about that, and so there's a little piece of New Haven in our set that way too. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's going to be fun with Richard and Katie and Rick with us. Richard is a fabulous banjo player, and he'll be on banjo on this tune. This is, shall I play a quick medley for you?
Absolutely.
So this is 9th of July off my next record, and also a medley into Angelina Baker.
Awesome.
So we'll be having some bluegrass and range of music in our set, and I'm looking
Cool.
forward to hearing Dawn at the Buffalo and the other headliners and this group from Long Island. You said
Yes, quarter
Horse.
they'll
Quarter
be
Horse.
at
Thank you.
1:30, I think.
They will be at 1:45,
Awesome.
but get there at 1:30 so you can get your spot.
Yeah, and we have a sound check at 12:30.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Charles Rathenberger. Jim
Yeah, my
Allen.
pleasure. Thanks.
Thank
out
you,
the
Brian.
Check out the CT Folk Festival on September 7th. And you've been listening to Northern Remedy, the show dedicated to New Haven's music, past, present, and future. And just as a little shout out to my hometown, here's a little taste of Dawn of the Buffalo. All right. See you soon.